Yeah, I guess I'll start. I want to thank the speakers for really interesting talks all day today. And it was really, I guess, appropriate that Suki, or helpful for us at this point, that Suki Dorfman, cast her talk in the framework of the Earth and Time report. That's the subject, I believe, of a survey that we have ready. And Stella, maybe this is a good time to,
yes.
Tom, did you have a different plan? But
no, let's do it.
I think it's a good time to, to kick off that survey and get the audience opinions on the Earth and Time report.
So what we ask everybody to do is please go to the chat, and there you will find a link that was just posted. And this is just an anonymous survey. We would like you to go there and just give a quick reply. We'll give like a couple of minutes for you to reply, and soon we will see the result. So the question, again, it was really fitted that Suki's presentation was now, it refers to the 12 science priority questions of the NSF Earth and Time report. And you're asked to select all those that apply that address, that you think they are addressed by the high pressure community. And you also have an opportunity below on the second question to reply whether you think this list reflects the most important questions that they are being addressed by high pressure research. So we can see already 3 responses. We have almost 100 participants, so we should get a lot of responses. We see 9 so far. Okay, I think I will start sharing my screen now.
People can still vote.
Yeah, please.
This is real time, so things can change.
Voting. I constantly see this number here of the responses changing, and I can see here that most of the people see all of the questions being represented. Some have smaller representation than others, and I will just pass this to Tom and Andy for further discussion now.
All right, thanks, Stella. Okay, well, there's quite a diversity of opinion there. So let me go back to the Earth and Time report, and let's look at how the authors of that report viewed this in terms of user facilities and what it might mean for our new organization, particularly because I think one thing we need to think about as a community is the new organization is more than just Compress. And I think the Earth and Time report is very important in the sense that it's asking us to think more about our links with other earth science disciplines. And we need to find a way to move beyond, Compress and form a bigger organization, a more disciplinary, diverse organization, but one that is also united and an effective organization for our community. So, for a lot of the younger people here, you probably don't pay too much attention to these types of reports that are produced by organizations like the National Academy of Sciences, but they're very important, and NSF views these as very important, and this sets the priorities for NSF. And so, the people in our community, people like Steve Jacobson, who worked on this report, it's really an important contribution. So I would urge you to look at this report. You can download it from the National Academy website, or you can buy it if you want a hard copy. And what I would like to say, though, is so here are these 12 questions that you all some of you just voted on. And in the Earth and Time report, they actually had this handy table, which specifically looked at the connections between these priority science questions and user facilities. And so this is a much bigger table that I just took a section out of. And these are a number of different facilities. We don't have to get into all of these. This is, the seismic facility, and this is the geodynamic facility, and so on. But here, under what they called materials characterization, they have Jesse Cars and Compress. So these are the 2 organizations that we're going to merge and unite and expand in the new organization. And the 12 priority science questions are listed here at the top. And so this was the authors of this report. This is how they viewed it. If something is filled in here, if a square is filled in, then it's sort of a primary application of this user facility to this question, and then the open circles are maybe a little more remote. I would disagree personally with their assessment of compress. I think we have a role to play in understanding variations in topography because they depend on rheology. I would define the water cycle maybe more broadly than they are thinking about it here. And so we would obviously contribute to that and so on and so forth. But you can debate that. But I'd also like to point out that if you look at Jesse Cars and compress together, which will form a chunk of the new organization, almost every one of these is represented. So in that sense, our new synchrotrons have a major role to play in answering these 12 priority questions. So this is a different perspective on these sorts of questions. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. So I can stop sharing.
I think that's right. As has been brought up, a couple of times already, though, that does depend on a somewhat unusual definition of critical elements. I didn't count them, but I estimated that was, I think the Earth and Time report identifies roughly half, maybe more than half of naturally occurring elements as critical. And somehow one of those was not silicon, despite the fact that technological needs were identified as, one basis for criticality. But accepting, their definition of critical elements, cycling of critical elements through the Earth basically encompasses everything about, internal dynamics of the mantle now and throughout time, I suppose.
So do we have any comments or questions from the audience on these particular topics, or how you feel we should approach this sort of issue? So Sergey Lobanov has a comment. To me, one thing missing is the evolution crystallization of the magma ocean. Yeah, the whole sort of thermal evolution of the Earth, origin of the Earth, and thermal evolution of the Earth is obviously something, I think that could have been included here, but was not. And I think that is something that was overlooked. This definitely is not strictly mineral physics approach here. Yeah. So Faye, do you want to have a comment or question?
Oh, I just want to kind of follow up your initial comments as we need to set this organization much broadly, and it's also look at what NSF wants us to do is certainly be more inclusive. But that's kind of setting this, so obviously the disconnect between the funding, how much we can fund and what community we can include, right? And it doesn't really match in that way. But we could think about much more inclusively and kind of set these organizations has a way to grow, and was future. If you want to set us much more broadly, we need to look at the much broadly in the way is there's a way in the future the funding we can grow, right? And that will be something keep in mind of what how we kind of start with what they basically give us as a budget, and what we can do, right? But there's a room for new organizations really be able to tap up as a resource and grow. and bring other communities.
Right, I agree with that. Quentin?
Yeah, I think Faye raises a good point, but I think the corollary issue as well is that we have the NSF basically saying we need to expand the purview of this organization. And clearly, Compress and Jesse Cars has a component that is environmental, and so clearly their footprint extends to many of these domains. And the question in my mind is, how effectively will communities like low temperature geochemistry and to some degree rock mechanics self-nucleate to actually make reasonable requests? Compress and Jesse Cars have a great 20+ year tradition of a community organizing to basically say, we have these needs at synchrotrons. I've actually heard rather little of that from either of those communities. So I think we need to not simply say we must broaden greatly. We have to make sure that we broaden in an intelligent and thoughtful way that incorporates the needs and goals of those communities, if they are willing, if they are willing to articulate their needs. And to date, I have to confess, my own viewpoint is they have not done a great job. In terms of Sergey's point also, I'll just make one more point to follow up. I think that report, the thing that I agree entirely with his comment about basic, and your follow-up about Earth origins, Tom, is that I think there was a almost implicit reluctance to delve at all into things that were perceived as NASA territory. The only mention of the moon or lunar in that entire report, and I always view this as an Earth-Moon system that we have evolving here, is one brief mention of lunar samples on like page 71 or something. So it was very much a territorial Earth-centric view that somehow lost that you need to establish the initial starting conditions to actually make the planet. And that is a lost opportunity, I think. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, well, Yanbin?
Yeah, to follow up on Quentin's comments. I know a little bit about the rock deformation community. I don't know whether Wen Lu is here. She's supposed to give an overview talk later today. The rock deformation community has been working very hard for the last several years, but without much of success in getting funded. So right now they have these in situ rock deformation, what they call the
Research Coordination
Network. Yes, and she will be giving a report on that, I think, later today, only like maybe an hour or so after.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and it shows it actually takes a long time for communities to get organized. I mean, in high pressure, we've been kind of organized for a long time, and it's a natural way for us to do business. But but for many communities, that's not true at all. And I think rock mechanics is a good example that it takes time, and you try different things and they don't work. But I think they are getting together, and they've got some great ideas. And there's a lot of synergy with things we do, some very similar techniques, even similar equipment. So I think, and I think some of the geochemistry communities, I agree with Quentin, they're further behind. And so part of the new organization has to be finding a way to facilitate and help them. And, I think those of us, many of us in this community, we've really benefited from, going all the way back to Chipper more than 20 years ago. And that sort of started, the community organization and then moving into Compress. And that has really, really been a benefit to our community. But it takes time and hard work, and it's not natural for a lot of people. Kenny.
So I guess I'd like to represent the volcanological community and mostly echo what you just said. I don't know if I might be the only person here from volcanology, and 67% of people, it looked like, voted that volcanoes or something and what drives volcanism can be addressed by high pressure community and synchrotron research. And I totally agree. That's why I'm here today, and I'm trying to join in this group. And I am sure that volcanology and shallow, right? You guys talk about deep petrology, right? But us shallow petrologists, we would love to learn more about it, but the activation energy, the time to get in is going to take a while. But there will be a community ready to help you. And I can help make introductions, or you have people at your own schools that can help build your proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Sean?
Yeah, I agree. Broadening the perspective is very critical for next, after compress. I'm a rock mechanics guy, okay, also. So in the next talk, I'm going to discuss a few things about the rock mechanics, which can be done only by synchrotron, okay?
Right. That's a great, we'll look forward to that talk, and that will be a great example. And with Wenlu's talk coming later, it'll be a great example for people to see some of the synergies and connections. Russ.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on your point, Tom. I think you put it very well. One of the successes of Compress has been its ability to support a broad range of faculty, in particular junior faculty and students. And when Compress was set up, it set in place modalities to do that very successfully. So coming back to Quentin's point about the different communities coming together, what was clear early on is that we needed dedicated beamlines. It's not clear you need dedicated beamlines for some of these other activities, but you could very well have programs put in place to have a pipeline for students and postdocs and early career faculty to use those beamlines. And I think that's what Compress did very, very well.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. I think Compress was really important in the growth of mineral physics. In those early days, mineral physics was much more restricted, and it really grew across many different universities. So a lot of us owe our jobs really to the work that was done in those days in Compress. And yeah, we can do a lot to facilitate. You're right. Even when a dedicated beamline is not needed, for instance, volcanology, there's so much synergy with the tomography work that that is going on both at Jesse Cars and other places. I think that's going to be a great growth area for synchrotron and geoscience.
Yeah, there's some of that happening now. I know Gil Gualda at Vanderbilt uses tomographic studies of GSE cars for volcanology applications.
Right, and there's work done at ALS on this by Michael Manga's group and others.
That was mentioned yesterday, yeah.
Yeah. Other comments? I'd like to mention, another synergy that is important that we need to think about is the connection to theory and computations. I think we shouldn't view this as just an experimental organization. We need to figure out a way to really work with theorists and computational people. That community is exploding as well with new opportunities. Whether it's structure searching, machine learning techniques, and so on. And I think they have a lot to offer us, and we have a lot to offer them as well. And so we need to work on that. Was something that was never particularly strong in Compress, and we need to work on that and strengthen that further. Don?
Okay. I think one of the things that, at least in my view, that has happened is that the modality that DOE interacts with the user community has evolved a lot over time. And we've gone from PRTs to CATs, and in those things have changed. And with NSLS, your main entry is as a partner user onto a beamline, rather than being able to say, well, we're going to build a beamline. And building a beamline, gives you a sense of ownership, gives you a sense of being able to direct it at purpose. You can decide how you build it, put it together, what computers you use, and so forth. And if you move into NSLS, that the PRT system is no longer an active system. you can't come in and take over a beamline. Or if you do, like in the superconducting wiggler they bought, it's $25 million and it wasn't enough money to build it out completely. And so I think what we have to be very sensitive to is to understand how we can really interact with this new modality and what's the best way to do it. And I'm not sure that we know that right now. And, the beamlines I run, one of them is at NSLS2, we're a partner user, and the other's at APS. And they're just so different in the sense of those. At NSLS2, you're a visitor, and maybe you get a 3-year term to be a partner user with a little bit of beam time or something, and you go through a review and you can say, okay, next guy come up and make them partner user. At APS, it's more like, okay, we own this hutch. We can bring in the kind of equipment we want. We can use the interfaces we have with the motors and drivers and things. At NSLS, you can't do that. You have to use their motor drivers and things of that sort. So it's maybe this is just a quirkiness of the NSLS2, but I think that's something that we have to learn how to do that. And so you have a community like rock mechanics coming in, and for them to say, okay, we want to have a beamline, that's a really difficult kind of thing to do. That's not a very possible task. Maybe something like Cornell would be a way where there's out from under the DOE kind of regulations. But anyway, this is a concern I have. I don't want to keep going on, but that's
right. So each synchrotron may be different, right? And the thing is, we really want to have find a way. I think as a community, there are opportunities to spread our resources among different synchrotrons, and we don't, for the high pressure community, we don't really have much at SSRL or CHESS. But you're right, each synchrotron is different, and these models evolve over time, and the beamlines are super expensive now. Russ, did you want to add something?
Yeah, since Dawn mentioned the partnership with DOE and how it evolves, its programs evolve, its missions evolve. But one thing that's been kind of a big disconnect throughout this whole thing is it's basic energy sciences DOE that supports these big facilities. And yet the science program in BES does not have mineral physics in it. It's not interested in the deep earth, and it hasn't been for many, many years. So there's kind of a disconnect there at the science level that, in spite of the disconnect, this partnership has worked very well. But on the other hand, I think this is a real opportunity to broaden the program. We will be more relevant to the science program within BES. So that's a real opportunity that we can grab by this new initiative that NSF has put before us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ahmed.
Maybe it's just me, because I'm still not clear how NSF is dealing with or interacting with DOE in terms of these large organizations. So we have a fixed budget, but if we want to include more communities, more users, there's a clear need to have more facility like beamlines, or maybe more chunk of times to use. And I hear a lot of these things are basically under DOE control. So how, as we're below these levels, how do we interact with both funding agencies, try to optimize the organization? That's an issue that I'm not clear with.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge going forward. I don't really have an answer for you. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that. I guess we're, Stella, are we supposed to wrap this session up pretty soon? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
It was a great discussion, but yeah.
Okay, sadly, it has to come to an end.
Sadly.
Okay, well, thanks everyone.